And what's going on, Los Angeles, Bruin Nation, LAFB fam? How we doing? The Madman here for all of your UCLA football needs, and want to get into it. This is a podcast I didn't think I would have to create Sunday morning here after an absolutely devastating loss to UNLV, dropping the Bruins to 0-2, a game that, myself, Thriller, Wayne, we all thought was a very winnable and achievable game. And we'll have Thriller and Wayne on in the days to come as well. But just wanted to kind of get on here to provide sort of an instant analysis and recap of what we saw last night in Las Vegas. Bruins fall short in a very disheartening fashion, 30-23 at the hands of Mountain West opponent UNLV, and putting the Bruins now in a position of being 0-2 for the first time since year 2 of the Chip Kelly regime in 2020, and really questions abound across all states of this program. Where to begin? I know that this game, I think for many of us, looked like a tale of two games, if you will. The 23-0 deficit for UCLA. Shockingly, that this team was down 23-0 with about a minute 49 to go in the second quarter. And then the second half of that game from there, minute 49 from the second quarter to the second half onwards, where UCLA outscored UNLV 23-7. And so it felt like a tale of two games. But I'll be honest with you, and I'll break it down here. It really felt like a tale of three games to me. It was the Bruins falling behind 23-0 with a minute 49 to go in the first quarter. And then there was a period where it was the Bruins outscored UNLV 13-7 to bring it to 30-13 was, to me, kind of chapter 2 of this game. And then the final 11 minutes where the Bruins outscored UNLV 10-0 and tried to make a frantic comeback was really chapter 3 of this game. Three very distinct phases to this game in my mind, and I'll break it all down for you here on the one and only LAFB network. But we have to begin with how this team opened. And considering the 43-10 dismantling of this group week 1, and all week, Coach DeShaun Foster speaking about, quote-unquote, this team is close. They're going to turn the corner. For this team after that week and that sort of opportunity for preparation that Coach Foster had with his team to come in and lay the type of egg that they did over the first 28 plus minutes of this game is inexcusable. It's shocking, and it's deeply concerning to the point where you're starting to wonder if Coach DeShaun Foster is in over his head. Candidly. And for this team to have the issues that they did, and this 23-0 wasn't the case of turnovers or pick sixes or special teams returns for touchdowns or sort of fluke big plays, where sometimes that happens against a lesser opponent. A lesser team will jump out in front with a couple of big plays, a couple of gashes, a couple of busts. And then as the game settles, kind of the favorite, the better team moves and progresses and matriculates and eats into that lead. This was not the case at all. This was a 23-0 absolute annihilation of UCLA. The Bruins couldn't do anything offensively, couldn't move the ball with any type of consistency. The offensive line was getting blown up with UNLV's defensive line, a team that had given up 440 yards on average over the first 2 weeks to the likes of Idaho State and Sam Houston. And for that group to totally dominate the Bruins in the fashion that they did, 23-0, en route to having 250 total yards of offense in the first half to the Bruins only 110, was just flabbergasting. I mean, you were absolutely stunned as to what you saw in the first half of this game. So much so that my phone was just absolutely blowing up from friends, from family, from my dad, from everyone saying, what is going on here? What is the state of this program? What is the state of leadership with this program? And does anybody even care? The emotion level was unbelievably high, I think, with Bruin Nation. over the course of this first 28 minutes. You saw it on social media, and I certainly experienced that in a very personal and very visceral way. The Bruins just could not get anything done. UNLV did whatever they wanted to do: inside runs, zone stretch runs, fades to the outside, seam routes to the tight end. It just did not matter. There was very little resistance on the defensive side, and offensively, the Bruins just couldn't hold the ball long enough to be able to give their defense a breather, and things snowballed very, very quickly. Nico Iamaleava had that one fumble, but that was on a fourth down run for a no gain, so it wasn't really a turnover per se. Couldn't get anything going. Tip balls, runs were stuffed. Javion Thomas had that initial 32-yard run on UCLA's very first possession. Outside of that, there were no big plays, and you're sitting there at 23-0 saying, my God, I mean, is this potentially a team that could go 0-12 this year? I mean, those were the thoughts that were running through my mind. Is this an 0-12 team? Is this the worst team in UCLA football history? Is this a team that's going to even make it to the end of the season with some semblance of team culture and chemistry? I mean, that was sort of the degree, I think, of panic that we all felt over the first 28 minutes of this game. And the other thing I'll say is what was so disappointing for Coach Foster, and again, I really like DeShaun, and I really hope that he succeeds in this job. But for your first pillar of your entire coaching philosophy to be discipline, and for you to ultimately have 14 penalties for 129 yards last night after a week off, after a week where you lost by 33 points at home, and this was about pride, playing a Mountain West team as a proud card-carrying member of the Big Ten, it's just shocking. And it's either his message is not being put forward in an appropriate way to these players, the players aren't receiving the message, the players aren't capable of receiving the message, he's not capable of giving the message, but there is a deep disconnect where when you say the first pillar of your philosophy is discipline, and you have 14 penalties for 129 yards. It's inexcusable. I was embarrassed last night as a UCLA alum over the first 28 minutes of this game, and it was just unbelievable emotion, panic, anger, resentment that we all sort of experienced as a Bruin Nation. But then things turned a little bit, and that second chapter of the game I thought was interesting. And I actually think the second chapter of the game was one where UCLA maybe got a little bit too much credit for kind of bringing that game closer. So let's not forget, it's 23-0 situationally. UCLA's got the ball, minute 49 to go. From that period until 11 minutes in the fourth quarter when it was 30-13, this is the period I want to zone in on now. That first drive of that period with a minute 49 to go until halftime, UCLA was aided by a ton of UNLV penalties. UNLV had to kick the ball off from their own 15-yard line, allowed UCLA to set up on their own 40. UNLV followed it up with a significant penalty to move the ball down the field. And then there was that very interesting fourth down situation where the throw in the flat to Mikey Matthews on a 3-yard kind of bubble screen. Mikey Matthews was just short. DeShaun Foster chose not to use his last timeout in that particular situation, but failed to be able to bring a game plan together while the officials were reviewing. So after the review, the Bruins ultimately had to burn their final timeout, which really limited their ability to take a shot in the end zone. They get 3 points, but it was a very choppy 3 points. And then that first drive in the third quarter, Bruins go 12 plays, 75 yards, take about 7.5 minutes off the clock. But I'll be honest, that was a drive where it was so difficult to get any sort of flow offensively. I think the Bruins and Tino Sunseri found some things in terms of that intermediate crossing route across the middle, particularly with Quasi Gilmer, and then a little bit with Mikey Matthews. So that started getting the offense going because that was sort of a go-to play. But you had that run by Anthony Woods, and then Armella had the unsportsmanlike conduct on the sideline, brought you back, and it just kept being this, 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Ultimately, the Bruins found themselves 4th and 9 at the UNLV 33. I think Iamaleava probably made his best throw until the final drive, finding TMA for 15 yards on that inside slant, 4th and 9, that kept the Bruin drive going. But then ultimately UCLA was still 3rd and 14 at the UNLV 22-yard line and really kind of searching for answers there, but bailed out yet again by a UNLV mistake where Jack Peterson, it was a PI call, bang play. That was the play that Peterson had the ball got ripped out, bounced off his foot, and then the UNLV defensive back was able to recover it and make a return. But that penalty enabled UCLA to get 1st and goal at the 10, and then ultimately Iamaleava found a nice little crossing route there to the tight end for 4 yards and a touchdown, made it 23-10. But it was a very choppy drive and very much aided by UNLV mistakes. And then UNLV got the ball and ultimately first play ran for 8 yards and then inexplicably threw the ball twice. 2nd and 2, 3rd and 2, stopped, and then UCLA got the ball again, goes 14 plays, 52 yards, 7 minutes off the clock there. But unfortunately, that drive, again, felt very choppy. There were some more crossers across the middle. Huge play on 3rd and 9 where Iamaleava found Gilmer, who was sort of draped all over everyone. He juggles, makes the catch to get that first down. And then Iamaleava, 3 plays later on a 4th and 1 at the 11, a keeper goes around 1st and goal at the 1 on that particular drive. But the Bruins from 1st and goal at the 1 could not punch it in. Berger got stuffed twice from the 1 yard line on 1st and goal and 2nd and goal. And then unfortunately, TMA with his hands caught in the cookie jar on a pick play that would have resulted in a touchdown. Bruins got to go all the way back. Iamaleava sails a ball at the back of the end zone, really running for his life. Bruins end up getting 3. So, as much as UCLA got 13 points, that first field goal aided because UNLV had to kick from their own 15-yard line. And then there was an unsportsmanlike on top of that really shortened the field. But a field goal that was characterized by mismanagement by DeShaun in terms of the timeouts. You had the second drive that went 12 for 75. 4th and 9 was a really good play. Got a little lucky on that 3rd and 14 to kind of get the touchdown. And then you had a third drive that got field goal, but you got stuffed from 1st and goal at the 1. So even though UCLA was able to get 13 straight points there, they had 3 possessions to UNLV's just 1, and UNLV went 3 and out on a really some questionable play calling. You still didn't feel really good that UCLA really knew what they were doing offensively. And then, of course, UNLV marched down the field to make it 30-13. I think it's really that chapter 3, when it was 30-13, is when things really swung a bit in UCLA's favor. At 30-13, I think Iamaleava being able to have those quarterback keepers on the outside on that possession, he had that nice 15-yard scamper down the sideline, and then that beautiful keeper, that 30-yard touchdown, made it 30-20 very, very quickly. And then that's when I thought finally defensively UCLA showed up, where Keyshawn Bennett was kind of an unsung hero here. Both he and Anthony Jones recorded sacks in this game and really disrupted. And so I think UCLA may have found some answers a little bit at the edge there, but Keyshawn Bennett's sack of Anthony Calandria almost became a pick 6 as Devin Apu sort of picked up that panic throw, that panic shovel throw from Calandria and walked in. On further review, Calandria's knee was down, but that play by Bennett was got UCLA the ball right back at 30-20. And then Berger was able to sort of sprint for 20 yards. And then Nico had that throw to Jack Peterson there. Oh, man, that 2nd and goal play, and he just in the red zone just missed him. And then the Bruins had to settle for 3. But I thought those 2 drives, it was interesting because Nico was able to run to the outside on these keepers and stay outside the tackle boxes. And then on the zone read, that opened it up for the running backs to sort of run more up the middle in between the tackles. And so keeping the defense off balance there, I thought, is something that UCLA found. Did a great job getting one more stop. And then I thought Nico's best drive was that final drive at 30-23. A couple of out routes to Gilmer were absolutely fantastic. Gilmer did a phenomenal job on those two grabs. And then ultimately, Xavier Staples did a tremendous job. Nico took a huge hit and ultimately found Staples on a couple of curl routes, really right at the hash marks there. But unfortunately, the game ended where Nico went back across the middle, tip ball, and that was ball game. But I thought really it was that third phase of the game where UCLA sort of found something. And I think offensively, they're going to have to go away from these crossers, intermediate crossers of 10 to 12 yards. Because I think they're very susceptible to tips. Nico had a lot of tip passes week one, had a lot of tip passes last night as well. And then it ultimately bit UCLA on that final possession. And then secondly, I think Gilmer and Matthews were taking some punishment up the middle there. And Gilmer did a phenomenal job, 8 catches, 87 yards, really kind of stepped in as that wide receiver one. But a healthy dose of Gilmer taking those pops, I think is going to be a recipe for disaster. I think what I saw at the end of the game is something that was much more sustainable than what I saw in the middle part of the game, which is more Nico running to the outside, and then you go zone read inside the tackles with your running backs, but then you're getting the ball to the outside as well. And so, you're finding Gilmer down the sideline. You can go Matthews bubble screen, but you got to have the passing game, I think, outside of the hash marks, because that allows Nico to be more in, I think, a run threat position as well, where he can sort of scramble more looking from the outside rather than sort of lasering straight in. And it takes the tip balls out of the equation. So let's hope UCLA takes the learning from what they saw really in that final 11 minutes of the game. But truth be told, given where UCLA wants to go, given the conference that they're in, this should never have come down to that. And the fact that a Mountain West team was really able to dominate UCLA for half of the game is completely inexcusable. And, where we go from here, I think is a very deep question. Home now for New Mexico, sitting at 0-2. I don't expect that to be a heavily populated Rose Bowl right now, given the product on the field. I hope as Bruins we continue to go out and support this team, but they're going to need to, I think, win a game at the Rose Bowl to sort of at least re-inspire the fan base for this season in particular. But given what we've seen now, week one and week two, we have to sort of reevaluate expectations of this team. And Will and I both thought this was a team that had the potential to be 7-5, and if the balls bounced their way, to be even more than that. I think we're now looking at a team, given the amount of talent on the offensive and defensive lines, this is a 3-4 win football team. I still believe that New Mexico is a very winnable game. I believe at Northwestern is a very winnable game. I believe home for Maryland is a very winnable game. And then there may be another game that they can win. But this is now a 3-4 win football team this year. And this is now going to be all about improvement and development over time and sticking with the script. It was also interesting. I think schematically, we saw Cortland Ford struggle last night at left tackle, particularly in the first half of that game. DeShaun Foster said he was battling an injury, and that forced, Garrett DiGiorgio to go from right tackle to left tackle, and then bringing in Ruben Unije at that right tackle spot. And I thought that DiGiorgio did a much better job left tackle-wise. Nico was still never, I would characterize him as comfortable over the course of that game, but at least he had more time in the form of a split second more, 2 split seconds more, 3 split seconds more, particularly post 23-0, to be able to make some plays. And look, I think Nico's arm talent is undeniable. His athleticism is undeniable. This is not on Nico Iamaleava. He is a 5-star quarterback, showed a ton of grit, a ton of heart, and really stuck with the script there and almost brought this team back. He is carrying a team on his back right now. This is a team right now in terms of offensive line talent, in terms of receiver talent outside of wide receiver number one, in terms of defensive talent, is just not there in terms of contending for the Big Ten. And so you've got a quarterback with absolutely everything on his shoulders right now. And so this is Nico Iamaleava is the last of UCLA's problems, folks. He is the franchise. He is the core. He's doing a great job, and he's doing as good a job as he possibly can given the talent that's around him. And the one thing I'll say to Nico is this is an ultimate preparation for the NFL, where you really have all the responsibility on your shoulders. Take this as a learning experience for when you ultimately get to the next level, because it's very rare that the quarterbacks from the Blue Bloods, from the Alabamas, from the USCs, from the Georgias, from the Floridas, all of these dynastic teams in the 2000s that had tremendous success, those quarterbacks didn't really pan out in the NFL because they had advantages at every position, at wide receiver, at running back, at offensive line. They had great defenses. And so when they got to the NFL and they needed a ton of responsibility and so much was put on their shoulders, they didn't know how to respond because they were never prepared for it. So Nico Iamaleava is getting an ultimate education on what it means to be a franchise quarterback on a team that's struggling right now. So lots to unpack there, folks. A lot of emotions, very raw. I know Will is very emotional right now, and Will and I will be back together over the next couple of days. But this was a really difficult pill to swallow, and we just got to focus 1 week at a time and get some improvement here. And it starts with New Mexico. Let's go out. Let's support the team. If they can get that win and get the win at Northwestern, you're at least at 2-2, and you can start having some semblance of momentum. But this is a team that is clearly in a total rebuild situation. Let's hope Anthony Jones, Keyshawn Bennett, we found something there on the edges. Let's continue to sort of build upon that to put some strain on the defense. And let's hope that some of the lessons, or particularly in that fourth quarter of this game, now translate over. Zone read, inside runs, get Nico on the outside, and use the outside sidelines more to be able to throw the ball, avoid the middle of the field, and let's see what that version of this team can do moving forward. It's been a tough couple of weeks, but continue to keep your heads up. Be loud, be proud, Bruins, always. And oftentimes, the night is darkest before the dawn, as the great Dark Knight would say. And we just got to stick with this team. But before I go, obviously, I have to sort of mention our sponsors as well. Sleeper. Ever heard of the Sleeper app? Here's a little secret. It's more than just a platform for season-long fantasy leagues. This year, millions of users enjoyed playing fantasy sports on Sleeper, but the app offers so much more. Live stats, real-time updates, and visualization on all stats, news feed. Get lightning-fast updates on your favorite players and teams, as well as real-time chat. Engage with other users about individual plays and performances during the NFL and NBA seasons. Download the #1 sports app today and experience it for yourself. And again, promo code UCLA LAFB. Well, Bruins will be back together over a couple of days with the Thriller. We'll get the Silver Fox on here. Hopefully lighter days ahead. But we're really in the teeth of it right now at 0-2. And all we can do as fans is support this team moving forward. No matter how we feel about the overall direction, these kids deserve our support, our love. And at this point, it's just all about getting better from one day to the next. And we'll let the results take care of themselves. But we're going to have to temper our expectations this year with this group. This is a 3 to 4 win team. And hopefully we can kind of get there week over week and build some momentum at the end of this year and going into 2026. But as always, be loud, be proud, Bruins. Keep your chests out. This is UCLA. It was once a great football program. It will be a great football program again. 4's up forever. And we always got your back here on LAFB.